very warm welcome, very warm Franklin welcome for the senior senator from North Carolina, the Honorable Elizabeth Dole.
Introduction. I'll tell you, if I could have that introduction everywhere I go, I'd have it made, wouldn't I? I have to tell you all, it warms my heart to be here with you today. I have a very good friend from years past named Dick Jones from Franklin, North Carolina. I think many of you call him Richie. Yeah. And I have been here in Franklin and visited with his parents and just love this part of our state very much. But we were good friends when he was at Davidson and I was at Duke, so I just thought I'd better own up to that right now. And of course we've remained in touch over the years, and he's just a wonderful person, and his wife Melissa. So I'm thrilled to be with you. This, by the way, when we found that the weather was turning so, it was really very, very hot at the Sarah Palin event at Elon College. And I was dripping wet from the heat, and I flew to Edenton to do 2 events in this black suit that had been out there in the hot sun. The very next day, the weather has changed completely, and I said, you know, I don't have a coat, but somebody stopped by Salisbury and please bring along a coat. So I'm not quite prepared for all this change of weather. It seems to keep shifting back and forth. But you know, I love the little story about George Bernard Shaw, who had a brand new play, and he sent 2 tickets to Winston Churchill for opening night. And Churchill sent back word that he was not available for opening night, but if there was a second night, he'd be there. And George Bernard Shaw then sends 2 tickets for the second night and says, a ticket for you and a friend, if you have one. If you have a friend. I feel surrounded by friends today, and I'm really thrilled to be with you in this beautiful, beautiful part of the state. So let's talk a bit about what's been going on. First of all, what you heard earlier is so true. We have got to really get out there. This is an extremely important cycle. And we seem to hear that most elections, but folks, this one is for real. This is one where every one of us needs to leave here today ready to pull out the stops, to put those signs up, to get on the phone banks, to make calls to everyone. I hope you'll go on my website, which is www.elizabethdole.org. and get information, email it to everyone so that they know all the things that we're doing. That could be very helpful. And then, of course, we need to load people up and take them to the polls, and early voting is on. We can really, no question about it. In a tough cycle, we can do this. We will do it with your help and with God's will, God willing. Thank you. Now, let me talk a bit about the issues, because some of the things that I feel we've been able to accomplish, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the tobacco quota buyout. You do have Burley in the West, but you know, for years people tried to get that tobacco quota buyout through. And there were not that many senators who were even involved or knew anything about it. So it took quite a coalition building to get that to happen. And I can remember one Saturday, I think it was on a Saturday or Friday when the Senate had just finished its work for the week, I was looking for Chuck Grassley from Iowa. I needed to nail down his vote. And I was told that Chuck had already left for the airport. So I got my young man in the car and I said, put your foot to the floorboard. Let's get out there to the airport. I got to get Chuck before he gets on an airplane. We got to the airport, and the lady who was handling security could see that I was really intense, and she knew me. And I said, please, let me go. Let me go. I've got to get to Senator Grassley before he gets on a plane. And so she said, go. And I went running down that length, and I found him sitting there at the gate with 2 people, one on each side, who kind of jumped up as they saw me coming because they knew I had something very important on my mind. Well, after I convinced Chuck that he should vote for the tobacco quota buyout, they clapped. The whole group there at the gate clapped. And so, you know, this is the kind of intensity that it takes to really get your legislation through. And that does infuse about $4 billion into North Carolina. And it certainly will enable people to retire with dignity, pay off their debts, transfer to another crop if they want with some help, or compete on the world market and continue to grow LEAP, which many are doing successfully now. Another, our armed forces. Don't we have the finest young men and women in the world going into our armed forces? In fact, my husband Bob was asked the other day, what's it like to be a part of the greatest generation? And Bob said, no. He said, that torch has passed. It's to the young men and women being deployed today. They are the greatest generation. They're so skilled. I've seen them in Iraq. I've seen them at Walter Reed and throughout our hospitals in North Carolina. They just can't wait to get well and go back. And I'm so proud of them being on the Armed Services Committee. So what we wanted to do was to make certain when the BRAC round came up that we lost nothing in terms of our military installations. And being a freshman senator, I thought, boy, this is a big assignment now. So I started in with Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, who was then serving, and also with the BRAC commissioner. Actually, Tony Principi was the chairman, and he had a lot of commissioners, so I called all of them. And we got the whole group together in Washington to talk and to underscore how great our military installations are. Worked with the state and with the communities. Bottom line, we came through with flying colors. We lost nothing and we gained 9,000 jobs at Fort Bragg, which is going to be another infusion of funds into North Carolina. And I have to tell you a little story, because one of the things that I care so much about is those families, when they're separated. It's hard to believe that there are people who would actually engage in predatory lending. When a young couple in their teens, who may not have a lot of financial knowledge, and they're trying to borrow some money as one is going overseas, and for them to be preyed upon was just appalling to me, because it was known that there was a regular source of income. So we issued some, we were able to get some legislation through to handle that situation. But also, I want to tell you about Ed Edmondson. Ed came into my office one day, a North Carolinian, and he said, Senator Dole, he said, my son has just come back from Iraq with head injuries, serious head injuries. And he said he is in a hospital in Chicago, a rehabilitation. And he said, I've just quit my job because I want to be there by his side so that I can encourage him. They tell me he's going to be in a state of vegetation the rest of his life. And he said, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to cheerlead, I'm going to inspire him, I'm going to work with those good doctors and nurses, and that's not going to happen to Eric. And I want you to know, bottom line, not too long after that, with some help, Eric Edmondson walked out of that hospital in Chicago. And he's been in my office. He's in a wheelchair. He still can't speak. He's still going through rehabilitation, but his eyes filled with tears as we were talking. And his dad said at the end of the visit, he said, Eric wants to show you something. And he got up out of that wheelchair and he just kind of crossed over the room with some help. He gave me the biggest hug I've ever had, except from Bob Dole. Well, obviously, this was an inspiration for legislation, because a family member, a parent or a child or a spouse, should be able to be by the bedside of someone severely wounded. And so working across the aisle, we got it done. The legislation is now law. They give 6 months from the Family and Medical Leave Act to do just what Ed Edmondson did, and I'm proud of that. I had to kind of get in front of the train on a couple of things. The administration wanted to have a Medicaid rule that would have meant that about $330 million would be lost by our public hospitals, who are helping the low income and the uninsured. I felt that was wrong, because they would continue to provide the help, but unfortunately they would have to lay off people, or they'd have to ask for local tax increases. So we got in front of that train and were able to get a moratorium. That saves North Carolina's public hospitals for the last 2 years, each year $330 million. And I think that's an area we're going to have to try to get fixed permanently, because this is too much of a burden on our hospitals to have to pick up that loss. So pretty pleased to get that through. Now I want to talk too about what we've been doing with regard to illegal immigration. First of all,